speaking the truth. James Baldwin, who's one of the greatest essayists and writers in American history, was once giving a speech at Howard University in the 1960s. And one of the things he said is that we must learn to tell the truth until it hurts.
Mm.
And that's where we are on issues of race. Everyone saw what happened yesterday in our nation's capital. Much of that is a buildup of a nation that has refused to tell the truth and have truthful conversations about issues of white supremacy and white privilege. Not only that, but a legacy of race and racism that has very truthfully shaped the nation over the last 400 years. And so that's where we are at a true inflection point, recognizing that everyone is not in this situation as uh, being on one side or the other, but everyone has a role. You may not find yourself as a person who's benefited directly from um, racism or Jim Crow or the like, but everyone has a role in truth telling today as it relates to issues of race. And that's what the conference was about.
Yeah, yeah, that was good stuff. I'm glad we were recording. That was good stuff. Um, so last time, I want to bring Professor Golden in after this one. So last time on our conversation, we started off with like a metaphor. This was Bannis's idea. We came up with the metaphor of the white jacket and the black jacket. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, so let's start there. Bannister, do you have your notes there?
Yes, sir.
You want to start it off?
Sure.
Okay.
So again, going back to this Charleston conference, some of you might be like, "What's going on here with this? Who are these people? What are they talking about?" But really, at this conference, we came together as our only connection really was having traveled with either the organization Philos or Passages to the Middle East, and we came together and wanted to talk about the racial environment in the United States. And at the end of the conference, of course, we were given several action steps, which is so helpful. And we were paired with partners. My partner was the one and only Mark Riley, that you see on your screen. And he and I sat down and we started thinking about, okay, how can we take what we shared, take what we learned from this weekend and what we're still learning, the questions we're asking, and share it with our networks, with our circles, with our communities. And we started thinking, wow, how do we even begin? And we came along this metaphor of the white jacket and the black jacket. So we'd like to see what you guys think and see if it's worth sharing with more people or being critiqued. But to start off, the white jacket um, is made up of colorful strands stolen from other people's stories. And it's like white light, you know, how white light, but not pigment. White light is made up of all the colors, all the colors of the spectrum. But in order to recover stolen stories of the oppressed and of the oppressor, we have to take off the white jacket and put on the jacket of our family histories and help others to do the same, help others recover their family stories and their histories. So we can do a better job at truth telling about ourselves, about our people, about our peoples, and how we can live together. And I believe by doing so, we enter more fully into the family of God. So that was this idea of the white jacket for someone like me, a U.S. white American, who largely I don't have a connection to historical ethnic communities that my ancestors were a part of. It has been swallowed up by this racialized whiteness. And as I started learning about how whiteness impacts minority communities, I started to wonder, well, how is it taking away stories from my own life as well. So I'm in the process of wanting to take off that white jacket and bring on a new jacket of my own family history and help others do the same. Mark, would you like to continue with the black jacket part of the metaphor?
Yeah, I kind of want to stay on that white jacket part, and then let's talk about that. And then once we're done with that, we'll move forward. I see Professor Golden, that's like next in line kind of thing. And I think you'll have an interesting take on this. So what do you think, Professor?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. But David was asking you, and I would love, Mark, can you just say just 2 words about the black jacket? I think I get the white jacket, and if it's as I understand it, I've got some really, you know, some real thoughts about that. But maybe you can just add just a little bit of context about the black jacket. Yeah.
Okay, the black jacket. What I put was I said the forced condition from a history of slavery and continued marginalization, but nevertheless, the black jacket has a sense of pride from continued triumph. So that's what I put up for the black jacket.
So, and actually, just one quick process note. Everyone, please just call me Jonathan. I don't need to be Professor Golden here. It's much better.
Yeah, I call him not, but yeah.
So that's right. In Ireland, I was Jonathan, man. So
yeah. This,
So here's my, my thoughts, because one thing, my understanding of the white jacket, if I understand it correctly, like for me, this is one of the most important pieces that we're missing. We've gotten to this place of this where we ourselves, American society, has kind of reified this whole binary right opposition idea that there's white and there's non-white, and that's it. You're either white or you're non-white. I'll in a couple of minutes, I'll come back, or in a minute, and share, where I see myself fitting in there as Jewish, right? That's really, problematic for me, to check the white box, and I'll explain why in just one moment. But I also think, if I understood what you were saying, David, like for me, and I've been talking about this a lot, and I feel like it's a little, I don't want to say controversial, but a little provocative. I think part of the idea is that as we've gone further down, these sort of separate paths of either white or non-white, that it's made things sort of worse because people are, forced to choose it. And there's no reality to that whatsoever, right? There's no biological reality. There's also almost no social reality to that. We all heard of the 1-drop rule. Well, why does that not work both ways? For instance, if you ask 23andMe, I'm 20% North African, right? So I got obviously at least 20 drops of non-white in me. How does that inform my identity, or not? But I also think that, I try very hard to comprehend, and I want to be really clear, because when I deliberately use the word comprehend instead of understand, because when I say understand, it sounds like I'm trying to be sympathetic. Realize I have no sympathy for the people that did what they did yesterday. I've been warning about this for over, 4 years, a long time. And it was just building to this. And this was, it wasn't inevitable, but anybody, that's been paying attention saw this coming. But, I saw some of the videos, and I kind of study white supremacy as part of, in my portfolio, I'd say, and neo-Nazi movements and white supremacist movements and all of that. It's part of what I teach in my classes, part of what I write about in a book that I'm working on. I'm studying some of the people that were former members of white supremacist movements that are now, peace activists and so forth. And but when you hear their so-called grievance, I literally just this afternoon saw a video of a guy shouting in the camera. Part of it is this idea that I think some white people feel that, like, as everyone else is celebrating diversity, and we keep telling everybody to celebrate diversity, that they feel left out, like as if they are, not that white, you know, is as David described it, encompassing all these different colors in some way, but just empty of it, devoid of anything sort of interest, ethnic, cultural, right? And so I actually think, I just wonder, I could be totally wrong about this, but if people were more likely to refer to themselves as Italian American, Polish American, Irish American, that maybe things would be just a little bit better than I'm white or you know, not white. That's just one thought, and I don't know whether that is true or not. I certainly don't presume to get into the mind of all these really, you know, nasty, ugly, hateful people. But I do think I've heard that enough, or they don't quite put their finger on it, but I feel like I can infer it from some of the things I hear them saying. The part that I mentioned, so this, in other words, this idea of deconstructing whiteness, and you know, because I mentioned my field is anthropology. So from the perspective of biological anthropology, there's just what we call a climb, right? A gradation of, of biological anyway, race across a broad spectrum. And this idea that anybody is 100% this or 100% that is just, you know, flies in the face of what we know about the history of humanity. And so, and then just to the specific point that I mentioned, you know, it's so interesting. Just earlier today, you know, Vanita Gupta, who was just, you know, nominated by Joe Biden as part of the transition team, shared a story about the first time that she experienced firsthand racism as a person of color, and it was in a McDonald's. And you know, I swear to you, that is my earliest memory in my entire life, was being roughly 5 years old, and my mom having a little bit of a disagreement with the lady at the counter, and the guy next to us in line, you know, making all these remarks about all these, you know, these cheap Jewish ladies with their pennies. You don't remember a lot from when you're 5 years old, but everybody remembers their first. Everybody remembers the first time they encounter that type of hatred to their face. And when you see all of the, you know, people with Auschwitz T-shirts and 6 million wasn't enough T-shirts, you know, yesterday, I want people to understand why, and this comes back to Chloe's point. Yeah, there's a certain white privilege. I don't get pulled over for driving while being Jewish, but the minute someone pulls me over and realizes I'm Jewish, I could be in trouble. And oddly enough, Jew haters have this real powerful Judar, I assure you, and they know who Jews are. You know, it's like that's the level of hatred. They've trained their eyes to see a Jewish person, and I can't tell you the number of times in my life, from, you know, right up until very recently, from that instance in the McDonald's when I was 5 years old. And when you see the type of hatred, it was just oozing. Yesterday's literal terrorist attack on our Capitol was oozing with anti-Semitism. So it's very hard for me to just jump into the white box. As Chloe said, there's no doubt about it that there's certain privileges based on my skin color and appearance that I, you know, I don't want to say enjoy, that are granted to me in American society. But this idea, so that's why, again, it's also this binary opposition where in appearance, I'm white, but knowing that every single person that may hate Black people or may hate Asian people or may hate Muslims also hates me, has a special place in their heart for hating Jews. I am not comfortable just sort of checking that white box. So that's kind of why I think it is a useful tool, this idea of the white jacket and the black jacket. I think because I think that it helps us discuss some of the complexity that is in there. It's a lot more complicated than white, non-white, and maybe this is a tool that helps us kind of unpack some of that and dig into some of the complexity. And I have a lot more thoughts on it, but I think I'll stop right there.
Yeah, we'll come back. And this was Bannis's idea with the jacket part. I think where it came from was the fact that you can take this jacket off. Like this jacket is removable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think we were intentional on making sure that we got people from both sides on this call. And like I said, this is a safe space. I want everyone to be able to share their views. I guess we consider them left, right, middle. I don't know. But everyone has different views based on their experiences in life. So, like I said, we were intentional to invite everyone on the call. So I wanted to see if we can get someone, like we just got Jonathan to share what he thought. If we can get someone that like thinks completely opposite to that, right? Because obviously this is a learning environment. So I don't think that we learn if we all on the call and we all think alike. You know what I'm saying? I'm completely against everyone thinking alike. So if anyone wants to add to what Jonathan just said, the floor is open. Okay, we'll come back to it. So we talked about the black jacket, but we want to move forward to the problem. And we came up with some problems. One of the problems were racism, obviously, right? And we added a new one, which was classism. But we also wanted to see if we could open the floor if anyone wanted to add any different problems along the lines of racism and classism. Like I said, the floor is open. Anyone can speak. Okay, we'll come back to that too.
For a second, before we move on, just to clarify, can you give a little bit more context on what you mean by problems?
Okay. So the problem in society today. So what happened yesterday is super relevant. I think we should talk about it. I think it's like perfect timing. So let's talk about yesterday. What are some of the problems that you see yesterday? And like I said, this is a safe space. I want everyone to be comfortable to share their views. Like I said, I do not like to have conversations where everyone thinks alike. So what are some of the problems that you all think play a role in maybe what started yesterday, what happened with yesterday, or whatever you think? And anyone can speak, especially like someone that hasn't spoken yet, if that's possible.
I think yesterday there was a problem with the fact that a whole bunch of people were rioting, and they all, for the majority, were probably white, and they were able to make it inside the Capitol building. But had they been any shade of a darker skin color, they wouldn't have made it that far, and there would have been a lot more violence from the police. Whereas, like you see totally different scenarios when there's like Black Lives Matter protests and like peaceful protests, and then there's like domestic terrorism and stuff like that, but it's recognized completely differently by the police. And I think that's quite interesting and something that people might not recognize as a problem from both sides.
Thank you so much. Do you pronounce your name Angie?
Just Ange.
Ange, thank you so much, Ange, for sharing. And you brought up a great point. Anyone else? So I guess I'll add to what Ange just said, and I just want to get like almost like a consensus, right? So we talked about. She mentioned how if they were of a darker hue, how differently that would have went. So I want to ask a question. When I say Black Power, what comes to your mind? floor is open. Anyone can go. When I say Black Power, Chloe Bannister, when I say Black Power, what comes to your mind?
I can speak a little bit.
Yeah.
My name is Ashley. I'm a resident director here at Union, which is how I'm here. I know that Bannister, David. But I immediately think of Black Panthers, which I almost said I have an interesting relationship with, but it's not that interesting. I was raised thinking, I just viewed Black Panthers in a negative light because of what we're taught primarily in the school system, or how it's portrayed in our social environments, or even just like what our parents learned and taught to us, or just, didn't say. And I remember visiting out California a few years back and being in an art gallery and seeing an art piece or collection about different, the artist had, her dad was a Black Panther, and just kind of like drove into his life as a Black Panther and how they were providing for their community and trying to find creative outlets to take care of the people who the government wasn't taking care of. And that just sparked an interest in actually researching and figuring out, like, or accepting for myself that Black Power is not anti anything else. It is loving yourself and providing for yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley, and thank you for coming back. I remember you from last time. What she just said was important, because I went to a predominantly white institution for my in community college, right, for my associates, and we would have like these conversations with white and Black people all there, and I would tell people that I'm pro-Black, right, and a lot of people would get like on defense with that one. It's like, whoa, what do you mean you don't like white people? And I'm like, whoa, that's not what I just said. I said I'm pro-Black. I didn't say I was anti-white. So back to the Black Power piece. I definitely wanted, like, I'm gonna be real candid. So I want a white person to be able to share. When I say Black Power, what comes to mind?
I would say that the word power just makes me think of like strength and unity, I guess. And so hearing Black Power makes me think of like Black Lives Matter, and with all of the attention that's on that now and has been for the past few months, like that's what comes to mind right away.
Okay, was that Ange?
Yes.
Thank you, Ange. So yeah, also, what comes to mind when I say brown strength?
I have never heard that before. I've never heard brown strength before, but it gives me the same, like, I would reiterate what Ange just said about like unity and just like being proud of your identity. But I've never heard of brown strength before.
Yeah, so the reason that I brought it up was because I had this conversation again with in a room full of a diverse room with white people, Black people, Spanish, and some of the people we were already friends, so they felt comfortable to just tell me like it is, right? So when I said Black Power, they got, it was like scary, like, whoa, what you talking about, Mark? Hold on, sound like a revolution about to pop off, right? But when I said brown strength, they felt like less threatened by that. And it was kind of the same thing. What do you guys think of when I say white power?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Mark, because that is more frightening to me by far than Black Power. It kind of gets to what I was saying before.
Which one?
White Power.
Okay.
When, I hear Black Power, and as Ashley said, I kind of have the same sort of images. Black Panthers. These days more, I do. Like you said, brown strength. I think of it also as empowerment. Right, the process of just gaining some measure of power and agency in a society where Black people have been, really marginalized. But when I hear white power, I'm like, putting like boards over my windows and hiding with my family in the basement. I mean, and I'm really not exaggerating. That is what terrifies me. And it's funny when I mentioned my credentials before. I'm also, because of my role here, I'm also on an interfaith advisory council for the New Jersey Department of Homeland Security. So it's a whole bunch of faith leaders and people from the faith community that advise our, New Jersey's own Department of Homeland Security and Preparedness. And so I get to, say this stuff directly to the director of Homeland. And on the very last call, I was like, look, we keep hearing stories about white supremacists infiltrating the police forces around this country. And is that true? And what are we doing about it? And obviously after we saw what we saw yesterday, we hear all kinds of stories about cops being in, cahoots with the Oath Builders and the selfies with, all kinds of stuff that's deeply troubling. So, that stuff is very, very real. But I always say it when I'm putting my kids to bed at night, and they're always invoking the specter of terrorism, like coming from the Middle East, or is it Antifa going to overrun our streets and all this law and order stuff? But, when I'm putting my kids to bed at night, if someone says, are you scared of anything? The image that I get is of a white power guy every single time. And none of that other stuff scares me in the least bit. So that's my short answer to what I think of when I hear white power.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. And I got like white friends, right? So we joke about it. We'd be like, white power, you know what I'm saying? So we usually joke about it. But did anyone else want to share?
I pretty much agree with everything that was just said. Just like hearing that makes me think of like actions of like what happened yesterday and stuff. And I just think like white people don't need any more power. Like they're already so privileged and so many people don't recognize that. And I think like giving them the phrase white power and letting them like use that is like a terrifying idea.
Yeah.
And like where it could go with it.
Yeah. Once again, thank you, Ange. And pretty much that comes from, like I said, the school I went to before Morehouse College, which is a historically Black university. I went there and like we would joke about it, right? So my white friends would be like, Black power, and I'll be like, white power, you know what I'm saying? That kind of stuff like that. But the most important thing that I want to like put out there from that is that comfort that we had with each other, right? They were able to they were serious about it. Like, they started off saying white power and I just like took it from them and I started saying it, right? So it kind of like took it out of, took the power away kind of thing. But, they were honest, they were, open and comfortable enough to be honest about it. And I really appreciated that. And I learned a lot. When they were able to talk and stuff like that, in the space. Obviously you got to create a safe space for people to feel comfortable to share their views and how they think. I'm all about like letting people know, like, I'm pretty sure everyone in this room have seen it, right? So it was like where someone says how they think and some people are like, no, that's not right. That's not, I don't like that. I don't like that in no space. Because I feel like how you think is based on your experiences and your experiences aren't mine, right? I can't expect you to think like a person that grew up out of Harlem, New York, right? Harlem Renaissance or all that kind of stuff like that, Malcolm X Boulevard, right? So I can't expect you to think how I think. And, I'm not gonna shut you down because you don't agree with me. That's when the learning takes place, right? So when I share how I think coming from Harlem and stuff like that, and Chloe shares how she thinks, what's that, like Wisconsin or something like that? Is that?
Oh, I'm muted. Missouri.
Missouri, yeah, I know.
Missouri.
I ain't never been to neither one of them. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, one of them. So yeah, Missouri, and then I got my man Bannister. Give me that. Okay, what was that?
What's your guess?
Kentucky, I knew that.
Yeah.
Huh?
Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky.
I was paying attention to the tape.
Oh, you heard that? You heard that one? I ain't never been to Kentucky either. You know what I'm saying? But you know, obviously I got to get well traveled in the States. I probably traveled to more countries than I did States. But yeah, but yeah, like I said, I definitely want to see if we can get more people to speak. What do you guys take away from what we've spoken about so far? It's like our middle point. So we'll take a quick pause right here and do like a go around really quick. And I want to hear what you guys think. No matter how short, you know, the floor is open. Once you unmute your mic and say one word, the floor is yours.
I'll start. I was hopeful for this conversation tonight in the midst of so much going on. I mean, socially, politically, personally, spiritually, and I just hearing your input, all of you that have contributed so far, and even those who haven't spoken, just your presence. That's what I've taken away. I'm thankful. What Jonathan said about the complexities of our racial and ethnic identities. That's sticking with me. I'm going through that in my head, in my heart, and appreciate you following up on that point about the distinction between Black power and white power in your responses to either of those. And Ashley, thank you so much for sharing about your interesting relationship with Black Panthers. Yeah, actually, that is interesting. I learned from that, so thank you for sharing. Those are some of my takeaways. Sam, you got some? Lindsay? Vanessa?
Sam, where you at? Who's Sam? Oh, my man Barkman. What's up, man? Welcome.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, as I've just been thinking through all that's been said, I remember something that Jonathan said earlier of like how it probably would be a lot better if people took pride in their heritage more rather than this like huge blanket of just like white and non-white. So I just background, I grew up overseas. I grew up in a small country of 8 million people called Papua New Guinea. And I grew up in a town where there were 30 different nationalities of people. And it was so cool to see everybody take pride in who they were and what their heritage was. And I think that's just so valuable. I think everyone should be able to speak about their past. Everyone should be able to listen. Like, it was a community where it was so different culturally, but the reason that it worked was because people were able to listen, that people were willing to listen. People were not there to stomp on other people, but were there to listen to others, were there to learn. So yeah, I want to thank you guys for sharing. It's been really great just to listen so far. Yeah, I'm having grown up in a country that isn't the US, I'm still seeking to learn here in the US, still trying to just coming back into a culture that pretty much is foreign to me. Yeah, I'm here to listen and learn. I want to thank you guys so much for sharing. It's been really, really good.
Thank you, man. That was good stuff. That was a good perspective. This pretty much came from me and Bannister working on the project, and I asked Bannister a question like, "Yo, where you from?" You know what I'm saying? And he was like, "Yo, I'm from Kentucky." You know what I'm saying? He ain't say "yo," but you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying? He was like, "Yo, he was like, yo, I'm from Kentucky." So I'm like, "Nah, where you from before that?" You know what I'm saying? He like, what you said? What you said? You don't know, right? I guess he was talking about his grandparents, and he was like, you know, we're from Kentucky, and I'm like, nah, bro, you got to figure out where you from before that. You know what I'm saying? Like, where your peoples was from, like, where your ancestors was from. And I didn't even think, like, you know, we were just having a candid conversation. I didn't even think that he didn't know. Obviously, I don't know, but you know, it's interesting to speak to people and see who knows. Some people know, some people don't. But that may be the real issue, right? Like genealogy, maybe we need to come up with like a free one so everybody starts to figure out where they're coming from and like starts to learn about that, right? Because, and then we came up with the jacket thing because it's like, yo, if you don't find out where you're from, you could move through life wearing this white jacket and then subscribe to the traits that come with that without even realizing that that's not natural to you. You know what I'm saying? That's not really who you are. You operating out of a natural space. But like I said, I wanted to get people that think like the polar opposite, right? So I don't know if I need to like get out my house and go down to DC and pull out a microphone and get one of my, you know, my brothers on the phone. But, you know, I'm hoping that we got someone in here that can speak to that, you know, speak to that thought process.
I was just thinking, I don't know if this is like the opposite that you're looking for, but I can pretty clearly trace where my family's from, because I am third or fourth generation from immigrants from Greece. And my grandparents and my dad are really like strongly involved in like Greek culture and everything, and that's a really big part of their identity. I was just thinking, like, listening to everything, that it's really not a very big part of my identity, the fact that my family is Greek. And I was just realizing like what a privilege it is that it doesn't affect my life, like really in the day-to-day life at all, that my family more recently is from a different country, whereas if it was a different, like if there was somebody from Latino descendants that were here, it would still affect their day-to-day life, and they would have to face discrimination and oppression every day. And the fact that like I don't have to really think about where my family is from, I think that's what with like the white jacket, I can so easily check white because of all the privileges that come that I benefit from, whereas I wouldn't like think to like Green American because the color of my skin, I benefit from all of the privileges and that come with the oppression that white people have done in our country. I don't know if that fits what I said at all, but
yeah, no, that was perfect. Who's the Allie? Allie, thank you so much for sharing. That was great. That was perfect. Because that was part of what me and Bannister was talking about. Like, you know, he doesn't really have to, right? He could live his whole entire life in the country and never have to, you know, figure out or be curious at all where his ancestry traced to. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, thank you.
Vanessa, we talked about at the conference about your ancestry, right? We talked a little bit about that. And you were like, I kind of don't really want to know because it could be too painful for me to know everything. So I just didn't know if you had anything to share about like your ancestry, because you have a really unique perspective on that.
Yeah, so what was new to me when I went to the conference was when Commissioner Smalls was going over the Gullah people, and she had mentioned Igbo. So that's the tribe of where my family's from in Nigeria. So that triggered me because I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting to hear that first. And second, I didn't know what to do after I heard that, because to your point, I didn't want to look it up because I didn't want to know. And it wasn't that I wasn't curious, I still am, but it's kind of hard to face who you are and what your history is made of. And I'm not ashamed of who I am or where I come from or where my family's from, but it's hard to just picture my ancestors going through that. And I'm several generations down the line, living now, and I can't even begin to think what they felt or what they went through. And so for me, this conversation is always uncomfortable because you never know how people will receive your story. And then on the other hand, if people can resonate, it's almost like you don't want them to pity you at the same time. So like to Jonathan's point earlier, he doesn't seek to understand, but to comprehend. And so I'm hoping that we can all apply that to each other's stories and where we're all from and how we can all find a piece of who we are or tie our emotions and our identity into this subject because it is relevant to all of us. And no one should ever feel excluded from the story, but it's very possible that you don't know enough about your own, nor that you know enough about other people's stories. And so you should try to correct that and actively seek to know more. And I think this discussion, among many others, can start that process.
Can I just piggyback off of Vanessa's statement? Hey, everyone. And also wanted to connect it to what Jonathan was starting to talk about with yesterday's terrible events. My background is I'm Filipino. I was born in the Philippines. My mom actually is a second generation Filipina who was born in Flushing, New York. And I've been on a journey to kind of understand my American story because she left in 1969, having encountered the racism of 1968 when Dr. King was assassinated. And then shortly after that, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. And because of the turmoil, she was just 14. She decided that it was too much for her. She wasn't Black or white. She had no place to really belong, and just left and went to the Philippines and lived with her grandparents. Well, I've been trying to kind of piece together that story, and I've been reading about 1968 and how similar it has been to 2020 last year and all of the turmoil. And I don't know, it's just very shocking it was shocking and appalling and frightening to watch what was happening yesterday. And I still haven't fully processed it, but I think that there's something to it. There's something there that just to unpack a little bit more of like my own story, my mom's story, and see, actually just grieve that many of the things that she was wrestling with in 1968, 1969, all of those old hatreds are still very much alive. And something as devastating as, political assassinations, I just felt like for me, maybe for our generation, seeing the attack on the Capitol yesterday was just like very jolting and jarring. And thankfully there wasn't to that level of any like assassination or anything like that. But I feel like in this moment, it's like recognizing that we're going to have to like process and heal from what just happened. And, being someone who also has been in Jewish studies and connected to Israel very deeply, just the disturbing anti-Semitism also that was displayed yesterday. There's so much there. And like I said, I have to process it, but I feel really safe and appreciative of this space to just express that. And I'd love to hear you and Jonathan, if, I don't know, unpack that somehow. What's going on?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shireen. And I remember we met in yeah, thank you, Ashley. I remember we met in Charleston, and you spoke on your story and stuff like that. So I'm glad you were able to make it on and be able to speak on that, because that's like a kind of like a confusing place, right? Like you were like in the middle, right? I guess people couldn't figure out if they didn't like you or not because they didn't know where you were and like the whole thing. So yeah, that's something that we didn't consider. There's a couple of groups of people that fall in that category. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Did anyone else go ahead? Jonathan, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just gonna, it's really powerful. I mean, all the last few comments I've heard from you guys have been awesome and really enlightening. And in particular, I was born in 1968. I'm giving my age away here, and but and it's so funny that you say all of that, because I obviously don't remember anything from that particular year. But of course, well aware that was like what was always considered the most tumultuous year in God knows how long in American history, with the assassination of King and then Kennedy. And, my dad had worked directly for Bobby Kennedy. I have this really cool citation to my dad signed by him right upstairs here. But, funny to just sort of think, like, my whole life I've always been like, well, that was such a crazy time, the Democratic Convention, and just so much, like, our society was so unstable at that time. And it was just like so many things where you think, oh, well, that's, a pandemic, that'll never happen again. And just so many things that you think are things of the past. And to imagine that 2020, and think of the irony, I'm not sure anybody's pointed this out yet, that like we were all saying how horrible 2020 was and what a bad year and can't wait to turn the page on the calendar. And boy, if anybody thought 2021 was going to be better, wow, we are not off to a good start. But yeah, that's just really sort of powerful, and it really puts things, in perspective. Particularly you guys at your age, like, will just always remember this will be the year, the time period of your life and inshallah, we'll get through all of this from inshallah. January 20 on. I mean, again, even then, everything's not going to change. Like, these people have been there all along. I teach a class called Religious Pluralism in America. And the most powerful thing that I learned myself, I always say you don't really learn anything until you teach it. And the most powerful thing that I myself learned in that class was that the people that were adamant that this is a white Christian nation, it's easy to kind of wake up today in 21 and think that this is, this started with Trump, or, this has been there literally. They were debating at the Constitutional Convention when there was language about no religious test in Article 6. And then in the First Amendment, where, the Establishment Clause and the separation of church and state and so forth, and all these things that seem to argue for religious pluralism in America. And then, of course, the complexity of like how the hell, Thomas Jefferson can be writing this stuff about the equality of man while he's looking out his window and seeing enslaved people, him enslaving people in his own fields, right? The hypocrisy there. But that there were people that were arguing that this is a white Christian nation, that a Muslim or a Jew or even a Catholic should never be allowed to be president of the United States. That it's been there all along, that it's been there, that this current has been running through American blood from the very inception of America. And they fought then to fight against that. And obviously we're still fighting it all these years, later. So if anything, the good news of 2020 and so far 21 has showed us is that, we obviously the cliche and the horrible use of the term woke, but there's no such thing as woke. Right? It's a constant awakening that we all need to do every single day. Wake up and realize how much work we still have to do. And I think anybody that saw what happened yesterday, should be disabused of any notion that, any of this has gone away in America. And hopefully everyone has a much more realistic view of the work we still need to do in this country. I'm sorry, I'm not good at being brief.
No, that was perfect. That was perfect. Everything you said was on point. Thank you for sharing. Like I said before, we want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak in here. This is a safe space. I want everyone to be able to share their views and what they think, because I think what I heard yesterday a lot was that white people were feeling oppressed, right, in many different ways, whether it was having to wear a mask or stuff like that. I can't really speak to that, right? So, if anyone can speak to that perspective, or even if you don't think that way, if you know someone else that thinks that way and you can share what you think that they think, I think that'd be good.
Mark, when you say you heard white people were feeling oppressed, can you add a little bit more to that exactly?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not white, and I you know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to see if we had someone, because I know me and Chloe spoke, and Chloe was saying that she would be able to invite some people that thought differently, stuff like that. So I wanted to see if we can get someone to think to maybe share from that perspective. But nevertheless, what I think that they think, I don't know. From what I heard, it was the mask thing, and we're taking the country. I guess people are taking the country, something like that. Can anyone speak to that? Jonathan, you want to go?
No, I would, but I'll add a little prompts. Like the war on Christmas that we supposedly hear about, right? Anybody sort of feeling that?
What's that? Explain that.
Well, I don't see it, but supposedly, this idea, right? I mean, I had a neighbor who once said it right to my face. It's okay to be anything but Christian in this country, right? Is the way that she was feeling. That, everyone's telling me we could celebrate, this, we could celebrate that, but you show up with you say Merry Christmas to somebody instead of Happy Holidays, and you've done some horribly politically incorrect violation of their rights. And so I think people are sort of taking that and blown that up. This idea that immigrants and refugees are here to take our jobs, all that. These are some of the specific points. I think what to what you said, Mark, right, about some of the so-called grievances. Look, but I saw a great tweet yesterday this morning. It was just a picture of one of those clowns inside the building, Congress, with a gigantic Confederate flag, and basically the message was, don't make any mistake about what this is really about. So maybe that'll prompt some people. Is that what it's about, or are there legitimate, oppressiveness? I mean, you nailed it. Definitely people feeling the anti-maskers have sort of kind of all lumped it all together. It's this George Soros, and they want to vaccinate us, and they want to put a mask on our face, and they want to lock us down. They want to tell us no Christmas. These are the motifs that we hear. So I wonder if any of you have heard that from, say, family members.
Right.
You can talk about your friend that talks that way.
See, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
No, you go.
I just want to say, so my grandma, I love my grandma, bless her heart, but she is just so I don't know, set in her ways. She is an anti-masker. And so when she goes to work, she wears her Trump mask to work to make everyone mad, because she has to wear one at work. And so in light of yesterday's events, I was very upset by what happened yesterday, and just the horrible things that happened. But she reposted a thing that was these aren't even Trump supporters. This is an inside job from Antifa. This is not it's just, they're just trying to make Trump supporters look bad and all this stuff. And so Rachel Conrad and I, we both live at the Christian Campus House at Mizzou. I don't know if you had anything to add about, because we live in a very like conservative, and I mean I have more right wing views. I do have more, like, I lean a little bit more that way, but like we live in an area that is like very, very, doesn't even want to hear other perspectives. Like, so I don't know if you had anything to share, Rachel, that you have seen the past day or so about the white people feeling oppressed.
Oh boy. Oh man. I've mostly seen it on Facebook. Just like people on my friends list, and they're just I don't know. They're just acting like crazy.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, you're good. I was sitting here thinking about it. Like, I've seen people on Facebook losing their minds practically, because they're just like, this is peaceful protesting. No, not when you storm a building, but okay. And it's just like almost kind of what I've seen is that the second, and you can, and this, let's argue, but like the opinion I've seen is it's almost like the second that they realize that the government isn't gonna fully support that, they're like, it's over, all of our rights are gone. Or they're acting like, I don't know, Joe Biden is holding a gun to their head and telling them to give up their rights. And it's just, I just see meltdowns.
Meltdowns, keyword.
Sorry, that was kind of rambling.
No, keep going if you can. Yeah, keep going.
But it's just meltdowns. That's all I've seen. And people are like, well, they're just all defending, like, we have the right to protest. This is what using our rights is. And it's like, not quite like that. At least that's just me. But
What's
yeah,
frustrating? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rachel.
I come from like a really like kind of small town. When I drive home from college on old highways, the amount I still see Trump 2020 signs, they're still up. And so, oh, sorry, I'm done.
No,
I think what's frustrating for me is the same people that were really, really upset this summer about the Black Lives Matter protests, like literally these same people that were like, this is ridiculous. Like, these people are acting whatever, like, you can be mad, but, Colin Kaepernick, like, that's disrespectful for Colin Kaepernick to take a knee. But like literally the same human beings are saying, well, we are just frustrated. We're fed up. And I'm like, oh, the hypocrisy is just so frustrating. Like today I've just been so mad in light of yesterday. I just need to get off Facebook.
One thing I wanted to comment real quick is that 4 years ago when Trump won, I saw so many white Christians, honestly, quoting, I think it's Romans 13, where Paul talks about respecting the authority, and all authority has been placed under God. And those same people, dead silent now.
Yeah, Rachel, I want to thank you so much for sharing that. Like I said, I can't speak from, like a white perspective. I'm not white. Like earlier, Chloe said, that when she was in Charleston, she just wasn't sure where she fit in, like if her opinion like qualified her for the conversation. And I remember when she mentioned it to me, I told her it does, because no one can speak for you, right? No one can speak for, Chloe's experience. Like, I don't think a white person would be able to speak on like Black oppression. They can, talk about what they think is going on, kind of thing. But I think the black person is the best person qualified to speak on that. So, I think that right now, I think that I know me personally, I want to hear more from, like white people. But what I'm hearing is like a division going on it's like white people are saying to like white people, like, whoa, hold on now. Like, I don't support that. You know what I'm saying? You know, and it makes me think this morning, I don't know if anyone watches Breakfast Club, but Charlamagne the God is like one of my favorite people. And he named the people that were there like Vanilla Isis. You know, so it's just like I see like a division between, you know, between like, you know, white people basically. There's like a, you know, there's a change happening within their own community. And I also saw a post yesterday when they were basically saying, you know, letting white people know, like, you know, black people, we don't really care about, you know, like, you know, we're watching it, but we don't really care because it looks like it's a fight between white people and white people. So we just sitting back and watching. But does anyone want to add to that? Like, Rachel, thank you so much. Chloe, thank you so much. Does anyone else, any other white person, want to add to that?
I have a few things that like popped in my head as Chloe and Rachel were talking, and Jonathan actually. So I'm going to go in order of what I remember. But when you were talking about people like getting offended for saying Merry Christmas versus like Happy Holidays, like I understand why. I'm sorry, my roommate's like also talking on a Zoom call. So if you can hear that, that's what it is.
I thought it was someone else that was unmuted. Go ahead.
No, but like I understand why people are saying like, oh, we get in trouble if we don't say like Happy Holidays, but I don't understand why like it's so hard for them to just be inclusive of everyone and everything that's happening around this time of year. So that's like confusing for me to like fully wrap my mind around why people like think it's so hard to say Happy Holidays, stuff like that. And then the next thing that I was going to say was we were talking about when Trump got elected. One of my friends, we were freshmen in high school, and she wore a shirt that said "Not My President" on it and got dress coded. But there's kids that walk around wearing Confederate flag belts every single day and don't get dress coded. And so there's like a whole bunch of problems with that. And there was a lot of drama around that for a bit. And then there was one other thing I was going to say, but I'm not sure I remember it right now. So
yeah, that's fine. We can circle back. And I just wanted to add some context. I looked up some numbers earlier, and it shows that from 2016 to 2020, the majority of the individuals that support, I guess Donald Trump and his views are whites with no college degree, and it's also people that are older than 65 years old. So I wanted to see what you guys thought about that.
Is that Bill going to talk? No. Did I see?
So I apparently been writing in the chat, but I think I've been writing to directly, like a direct message to Bannister. But okay.
The professor here, I can't help my instinct. I know everybody who hasn't talked on this Zoom call yet.
Yeah. I'm trying to find like the you know, the best way to like get everyone to speak. We haven't heard from a few people, and that's part of the goal here. Is we want to make sure that we create a safe space so that everyone is comfortable with sharing what they think and stuff like that. Because like I said yesterday, you know, most of the anger that I hear coming from the people yesterday, I'm not going to get into how we categorize them, whether they're protesters or you know, all the other names that we got. But the people yesterday basically spoke on that they felt oppressed. I heard that a lot. That message was consistent. So I want to see if we can get an understanding on what that is and, you know, where that comes from.
Yeah, I saw super quick. I saw a guy. There was a video that was produced by a British, you know, TV station that was there, and you know, some guy right in the middle of the thick of it, right in the heat of the moment, kind of did a rage interview, and he was screaming at the guy, "We're good, decent people, and you're the ones that did this to us." by taking away our rights, by stealing the election, by and so forth. But he was like insisting that, you know, they were the good guys and didn't act or do this until they were pushed and pushed to the brink.
Okay, so you basically saying that that these people have been feeling this way. It's just, yeah, they're feeling
I'm
like.
just saying what I heard the guy say.
Right. Yeah. What he said, basically, he said that they've been feeling this way. But yeah, that was good. Anyone else from the bottom? I'm not sure if it goes in the same order from what I see. Anyone else at the bottom want to share?
Back row, you know.
Back row. You know what I'm saying? I got my man Grant. Grant, thanks for coming. I see you at the bottom there. Hey. He was in Charleston. So you know, you can kind of reflect on that. But I think that how like Facebook kind of works is like you get like you read stuff that your mutual friends read, right? And I don't have a lot of white friends on Facebook. Maybe some of my white brothers and sisters need to add me. But yeah, it's the same name, Mark Riley. Add me on Facebook. But the messages, like what Rachel was saying, you know, she's seeing like a meltdown, like a consistent meltdown. And Rachel, I don't know if you want to say more to that. Yeah, thanks, Phil. I don't know if you want to say more to that. But yeah, I want to hear more about like that side if you can. Because like I said, this is a learning environment. We're all learning. Thank you.
I'm so sorry.
You go.
Got it, Rachel. No, for real, you got it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just see an overwhelming like amount of meltdowns and a lot of this idea of, well, real Trump supporters would never do this. It has to be QAnon or Antifa. And there's just like an absolute, I won't say there's almost, and I know people on my friend's account who voted for Trump and they weren't doing all this, but there's almost like an absolute lack of responsibility taking. Almost as if because of the fact that they're Christian and they vote conservative all the time, they can do no wrong. And there's just a whole lot of lack of there's no way that could be us. They're just trying to paint us in a bad light. The Democrats are just trying to paint us in a bad light the way they always do. As opposed to, I think, you know, maybe actually looking at it and going, you know, maybe, you know, like, I know these people don't know these protesters, people I know, or if they do, I'd be surprised. They might, but it's just kind of like a lack of almost self-responsibility. And like, I think like you were saying earlier, Mark, I just forgot what my train of thought just left. But yeah, just like a lack of responsibility or even considering that this could be on them, pretty much, if that makes sense.
Because you're asking about like the perspective of people who feel oppressed and why they're angry, I just want to share a comment that was posted on something I posted today. This was someone commented this a couple hours ago. This is a girl I went to high school with. I don't know if you guys saw the photo of the noose that was hung at the Capitol yesterday, but I shared a photo of that and just how it's horrible. And this is a real comment. Any one idiot can hang a noose or carry a Confederate flag and ruin the optics of the intentions of an entire group. The point of yesterday was that 74 million Americans are outraged that our votes are no longer counted in this democracy. When the people's voices aren't heard, it's a scary spiral from there. This country is what it is today because brave men and women for generations have taken their protests to the government to demand the rights and freedoms we are so blessed to have today. And I'll be damned if we allow them to strip it all from us in front of our eyes. And so like, that's the heart and the soul behind, I guess, what happened yesterday. Obviously I don't agree with that comment, but that's just something that was commented on the photo of the noose. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that there's a lot of people that think that way. So I don't want to like invalidate that thought process. Whether it's true or not, whether it's facts or not, is a whole different story, right? But that's how some people feel, right? So I'm gonna say, as a Black person, straight out of Harlem, I appreciate Trump because he was able to expose America in a lot of ways. And I kind of want to kind of get to the closing part with that. But when Trump ran his campaign, he did mention that he was going to drain the swamp, and and that it wouldn't be pretty. And I think that that's exactly what he's doing. And whether the good, the bad that comes with it, I appreciate him for being able to be a voice for that side and be able to expose America. So. In closing, I did want to see if we can ask more individuals to speak on their takeaway from this conversation. We wanted to be able to give everyone a voice before we close.
Just another option, another question to respond to. If you don't have a particular takeaway, maybe you could share if you've ever felt like stories from your past. Your family's past, your people's past have been stolen or misunderstood, lost, forgotten, or erased. And would you share one of those with us in an act of recovery? So either way, if you have a takeaway or response to that question, we'd love to hear from you.
One of my takeaways from where we are presently as a country is that we live in two different Americas, and there are so many different ways that you can interpret that saying for what it means. But one of the most important things that I think we have to dissect is the fact that we've become extremely siloed over the last, I'll say since 2008, when President Obama was elected. You have a siloing of America where people just stop talking to each other across lines of difference. And let me make this very clear: it was not created by him; it was in response to him. And so, part of truth telling is understanding that we have to use the proper language to really interrogate where we are as a country. And so, over the last 4 years, dating back to the election of President Trump, we've had certain segments of the population who have been existing in an alternate universe from others, as it were. Like, people honestly curate the entirety of their lives such that they get different information from other people. And so wherever you stand, Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, whatever way you curated your life and whatever way you've internalized information, we've become really polarized. And so when you hear people saying that they've been oppressed, it rings fairly untrue to me if we're talking about the people who were storming the Capitol yesterday, because I can't understand the type of oppression they're speaking to. And so I think I have this fundamental belief that the train of human progress moves on the tracks of social dialogue. Like, we move forward when we talk to each other. And I think that forums like this are critically important for that very reason. But going back to the quote from earlier, we have to learn to tell the truth until we can no longer bear it. And America's at a point where we can't dance around the truth anymore. Like, it's time out for having patty cake conversations about these issues. We really have to dig in and kind of be vulnerable with one another, while also creating spaces of grace where people are allowed to make missteps and mistakes in conversation. But if we can't have these basic conversations when we've had one of the scariest moments in the history of our nation, where one of the most impenetrable spaces in our country has been stormed, and you have broad segments of the population racializing this moment because they don't understand it, I think we're at a very, very scary and precarious place. And so I think that what we really have to do and what we really have to work on is going back to our kitchen tables, going back to our family members, going back to our social media spheres, our schools, wherever we are, and having conversations with people, whether you agree or disagree with them. And I would love for that to be something that's a takeaway for everyone from here. It's just having a conversation with someone that you wouldn't ordinarily. And then in terms of the things that you internalize from, in terms of a data and media and news perspective, diversifying that which you hear. There's no reason why a person should solely be listening to a polarized media outlet like Fox News or Breitbart or whatever rabbit hole you want to go down. And what we recognized yesterday is that these are people who've gone down even deeper rabbit holes. And so what we have to begin to be able to say unequivocally is that right is right and wrong is wrong. The actions that took place yesterday were wrong, unequivocally. President Trump's complicity in those actions was wrong. Much of what he's done in his presidency with regard to rhetoric and demeaning people has been wrong. And so if we can get to those types of points of truth, we'll go a long way. But we have to be able to call right, right, and wrong, wrong. So that's my piece.
Thank you, Brother Chavis. And I just want to mention that is my mom's brother, well spoken. You know what I mean? My brother Phil wanted to share next, so I'm back out and let him go.
Davis, thank you for sharing that with us as well. And Mark, thanks for giving me a chance. 7 or 8 or 9 chances, really. You've asked several times for people to speak, especially those who have different opinions. And I'm not really sure if my opinions are different. I've never met almost all of you before. And we probably line up on a lot more than we disagree on. But I definitely was raised in, a situation and full of family members and a location that is defined by these so-called unspoken opinions that we're hoping to hear. The white evangelical Christian Southern, go so south as below the Bible Belt, if you will. I'm a white evangelical Christian from Texas, was very conservative and raised conservative. My aunt, I hope you never look her up, but she is a homeschool mom influencer on social media and running for local government in her state, and really dearly, authentically holds views that some of which you and I might think are either dumb or evil. And it is really, really hard to love and know someone that you disagree with and take a bit of humility to say, I don't actually know if you're wrong here. I think you are. My opinion, my situation, the facts that I've looked at tell me you are, but it's really hard, I think, to take a step back there. The fact that Mark had to ask so many times, someone, please, anyone who disagrees with me, please speak, not for the sake of argument, but for the sake of diverse opinion, I think shows us that there's not even very much diversity of opinion on this call. Or if there is, people here maybe are just listening and not sharing. And that's not inherently a bad thing, because, the several invitations that it takes, I think, are required for people to eventually gain that courage to speak. I don't want to sound like I'm rambling. I'm not some kind of closet Trump supporter or anything like that. I'm a centrist, if that's of any use to any of y'all. On the political, what's it called, compass or grid or something? Well, 4 panels. I don't know if y'all have seen that.
What does that mean, Phil? I don't know.
You guys know? Huh?
I said, what does that mean? Like a centrist, what does that mean?
It means that I'm really close to the middle point between radical or extreme beliefs on conservatism, on liberalism, on the fiscal and social sides of both of those. The reason I say that is because my centrism or whatever comes from constantly changing my mind as I hear people I care about fully and vocally share what they believe, and it really, really contradicts what other people I care about fully and truly believe. And I'm so sorry that this is rambly. It's hard to keep my thoughts straight here, but I think that the purpose of inclusivity would be diversity, right? But in order to have inclusivity, I think there needs to be an initial approach of empathy, and trying to empathize with that comment that Chloe shared from her her friend's opinion, even if it's not right, even if it's dead wrong, even if it's propaganda, trying to empathize with the fact that a person wholeheartedly believes that wouldn't lead us to laugh at it or to remind everyone that we don't agree with it. It would lead us to say, wow, there's a conversation that needs to go on about why they think that and how, I don't know. I don't know if anything needs to, if facts need to be reevaluated or stories need to be heard, but the people who attended that march yesterday, many of them you've seen did things that none of us would ever condone. And a whole lot did nothing even close to that. A lot of them were in the very back of the National Mall, had nothing to do with it. And yet it's bagged optics on everybody. And I'm so sorry. I wish that this had more content to it. I wish that this was better ordered. But what I'm trying to get at is just asking friends, commenting not to argue or not to just take all the bad quotes that they say, and just letting them fully explain themselves without responding. That's something I've had to start doing. And it doesn't help me decide anything better, I guess, but it does help me not burn bridges with people I care about. I hope that that's somewhat helpful to somebody. I joined this call not to talk, but to listen, which is why I held my tongue for so long, because I don't have any answers to these hard questions. I just know that I'm too ignorant to try, and maybe hearing y'all will help me be better with that. I trust that y'all are of a very similar disposition on this, and I'm glad that that y'all let me speak just as you did.
Yeah, Phil, thank you so much for sharing. Everything you said was on point. Like we want to hear more of that, and I think that the more we have this, the closer we get to getting people in positions that feel comfortable enough to enough to share it. But basically, what I'm hearing is there's like no conversation happening, right? So, like, let's create like a caricature of, and Lindsay's gonna go next, by the way. But let's create like a caricature of, like a Trump supporter, like a person from yesterday, right? So if I were to tell them, about Black issues, they probably won't want to hear it. They're like, this and that. They want to tell me about their issues. And I think that that's the problem. And from what you're saying, that's what I'm hearing. There's no talker and then a listener. There's, like that kind of thing. And that's what this is for, right? This is a learning environment. We're building something. Our leader, Christina King, we came up with an idea of doing like a podcast, right? And the name of it, that's why I put in the chat, was the Conversation Rules the Nation. And I think that comes from a place like what Phil just said, that if we can create a platform where people from all sides, with left, right, front, back, whatever, can be able to comfortably speak and share their views, I think that we'll get to more comprehension, like Jonathan said. We'll get to more comprehension, and then we'll step away from a place of like shutting people down and saying, "Yo, you're wrong, you're wrong." Like I said, those guys yesterday felt oppressed, right? I want to know why. I'm interested. I want to learn about that, instead of me saying that they were wrong and stuff like that. Of course, stuff like that. But I'm not getting into that. I'm more so interested in hearing where they're coming from. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Lindsay, I'm just gonna jump ahead super quick because I unfortunately need to bounce. My wife's about to kill me. I gotta go feed my kids and put them to bed. But yeah, so two things. I pledge that I will, like I listened to the other recording that Mark sent me. I'll listen to the rest of this so that I can hear whatever y'all have to say, that from here on. Because I really am interested in it, and just commend you all on what I've heard so far. I mean, especially these last, couple of points. I mean, that we really, I think, Phil, you made a great point about that, where, and Javis kind of said the same thing, that where it's worse than not listening to the other. We're actually dismissive of each other's ideas. This idea that you ridicule somebody, you know, and even to use your term, Mark, right? We sort of make these caricatures of people. We're not really interested in talking to a Trump supporter. It's easier to cut up, you know, a paper cutout version, a cardboard cutout version of a Trump supporter. Just put a, you know, get your least favorite doll, put a MAGA hat on it, and, you know, kick it around your living room, and you had your dialogue, right? So I do think there's a lot more that we can do, and I really applaud you on all of this. And you know, please keep me in the loop. I'd be really happy to, you know, to keep doing this with Conversation Rules the Nation and all of that. And I thank you all for sharing this really great stuff, and honored to be. And a shout out to Morehouse too. You know, this is I said to Mark earlier today, or was it yesterday, between, you know, Stacey Abrams from Spelman and Kamala from Howard and Warnock from Morehouse. This is a big election cycle for HBCUs. This idea, you know, if they don't prepare you for the real world, people better rethink that. So it's really just a shout out there. And thank you so much, Mark and David too, for organizing this. And thanks for having me with you all.
For sure, Jonathan. Thank you for coming. Definitely want to thank you for everything that you said, and definitely we'll keep you in the loop on the next one. We definitely gonna have you involved.
Yeah, please. Thank you, everybody. Great stuff.
Thank you so much.
So we're gonna move to like wrap up, but we still want to try to get at last people. I see Rachel hand.
Let's do Lindsay first.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's between her and Lindsay, but go ahead, Lindsay.
Hey guys, I'm a listener, so that's why I haven't talked yet. I'm like Phil. I listen and I listen and I listen, and I'm taking notes and I'm questioning things and I'm, you know, analyzing it. So that's how I learn, how I comprehend. So me being fully engaged a lot of times is me like staring. So hopefully you've seen like I'm looking the whole time and like taking notes and things. So I wanted to say thank you to Chavis, is that how you say your name? And Phil for your last comments, because and just Mark too and David, the way you really do want to ask questions and hear people's other opinions. And that's really good. So I related to a lot what Phil was saying about knowing people on both sides and kind of questioning and being like, well, is this right? Or is this right? Or, you know, just listening and wanting to understand and not really speaking until, you know, we can process what we've heard. So that's kind of something I just want to say thank you for, because I think that's awesome that y'all share. As far as comments or takeaways, I think continuing a conversation about, you know, conversations of generalizing, how we tend to generalize people, like you said, like, oh, this supporter of this side, whatever, must be like this, you know. And so how our generalizations affect our perceptions of people. And I think of another conversation or question I'd like to talk more about if we have future sessions is, what is the end goal? So when I'm looking at a conversation like this, you know, talking, hearing people, but as far as what is the goal of this, but also for even the Black community, like what is the goal to say, okay, we no longer feel oppressed, or we no longer feel like there's white power, or, you know, what is that? When do you know that you've reached the goal? How do you plan to reach that goal? I think, yeah, just what is the end result? What would peace or equality, equity really look like in our society? And then another question I had for future discussion: reactions on Black Lives Matter protests and reactions against this Capitol protest, because I felt very strong reactions to Black Lives Matter protest and this one. Both I did not approve of. And so just a conversation on the hurt that people feel and that drive to even during COVID to have a riot, masked or unmasked, whatever, to put yourself in a position of possible danger, or for those people who are intentionally causing danger for others. So just talking about that, and even perceptions of, was this riot worse? Was this riot justified? So those are my thoughts.
Thank you for sharing, Lindsay.
Lindsay, thank you for sharing. I remember you from last time, so thank you for coming back. And everything you said was on point. I guess we got a few people, very few, but go ahead. Rachel wanted to go. Go ahead, Rachel.
I thought of this. I've also been thinking about it a lot. Kind of what Phil talked about, like just being like, yeah, a takeaway being willing to have conversations with other people. I know I'm totally guilty. I get real fired up. Chloe knows that. We live in the same house. I can get real fired up sometimes, but I think, yeah, really important like idea is just to be willing to have conversations, because I think there's a lot. I mean, going back to the topic, I think maybe the people that are feeling like they're being oppressed also maybe also feel like they can't have conversations without being spoken over. And one thing that made me think of, so like I come from a rural area, so I also know like the wide range of voting, just kind of the way people vote. Like the example I'm thinking about is I think I know I've discussed with like in my college classes, I know people who probably would have voted for Trump, because unfortunately they've had a lot of years, I think of like farmers, where they've been burned really bad by national level or local level Democrats. So I feel like there's almost this discussion, like I agree, like having a discussion, you know, like kind of like, why, let's talk about, how do you feel? What do you think? And I think I just kind of rambled and word vomited what everyone else was just saying. But I thought about that side I wanted to say before I went.
No, Rachel, what you said was on point. We actually had like a little meeting right before we started, and you just said exactly what we talked about, right? We were asking each other, like, you know, how do you feel, right? Because obviously yesterday, you know, was a lot, right? There's like some emotions involved in that. So we were asking each other, like, you know, how'd you feel? And, you know, we were talking about like how a therapist is like, you know, where do you feel it? You know what I'm saying? And then I think David was saying he has some tension behind his knees and stuff like that. So, so everything you said, Rachel, was on point. But I definitely want to wrap up. It's 8 o'clock. I want to let people go, eat dinner and all of that. And I'm gonna put my man Grant on the spot. We ain't hear from him. We'll wrap up with Grant. Grant, where you at, man? Beckham, can you swim? Yo, Grant, can you swim? You got a last name.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Mark. Sorry, I was cleaning my room in here, just listening along. Yeah, I echo what some of the others said. I like to listen, and especially coming from a really white context. I grew up in a conservative Baptist church along the Bible Belt, you know, stereotypical stuff. And so one thing that I when we were in Charleston, a narrative that I kind of wanted to challenge, and I'll probably say again, is that I don't think that white silence is always violence. I think in a lot of times it can be, but I think sometimes it's important if you don't know what to say, or if you feel like you're going to be saying the wrong thing, to be quiet and listen. And so when George Floyd died, I remember when I started college, I kind of had said some insensitive things on Facebook in terms of not really understanding people's opposition to police at the polls or things like that. And when George Floyd died and there was kind of the national opposition to that, I didn't say anything on Facebook because, first of all, I felt like what I was going to say was just going to be a token statement and wasn't really from my heart. And I wanted to understand better why I had understood some things in the past that I had said and what needed to be said differently, or what I needed to change in my beliefs. And Charleston was really a game changer for that, and understanding and getting down with conversation with Black brothers and sisters who are from a completely different context than I'm from. And I think more than anything else, if you know someone's context and background, it's much easier to understand why they do what they do. And I remember Mama Kay saying at the end of the conference, she was talking about her personal interaction with white people, and she's saying how she's very open. She's like, you can come up and touch my Black hair if you want. You can ask me all these questions about being Black. You can, like, I totally understand if you're white and you don't know what it's like let's have a conversation. And she said, but that ends with the police. She said, if the police pull me out and abuse me or whatever, she didn't say whatever, but I'm kind of summarizing there. She said, I will fight back. I don't care if I die. And that really struck me because I felt like it was really in the spirit of when Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death. And I think for a lot of the Black community, as I've come to learn and understand, there's a very American, shall you say, but also not American, struggle of freedom or death. And a lot of Black men and women have given their lives over the last several hundred years, to get to the point we're at in America today. And things are continuing, but more than anything, I think what helped, kind of what I said a minute ago, is what helped me to understand why we're at in America, where we're at today, is understanding the context. And especially as you go back since the Civil War. I mean, some of you already heard this because I said this at the conference, but in my history books that I was raised in, there was the Great American Founding, 1776 and all that. That was great. And then we had, we did some other things. Britain was a little bitter. They came back in 1812 and said, hey, we still got beef. And we kicked their butts again. And then along came the Civil War. And oh, by the way, there was this thing called slavery, but no worries, we took care of that. And that was over. And then we had good old great Teddy Roosevelt. And then, we went on up the civil rights movement. Oh, by the way, Black people were still kind of mistreated, but, we took care of that then too. So we good. And I really feel like, there was a lot of whitewashing in history. And, then you come forward to today and it's much easier to understand, hey, I identify as a political conservative, but historically, politically, conservatism and its ideals has been used to abuse and hurt a lot of people, particularly the Black community. And if I don't understand that, I'm not really going to understand why it's challenging to have a conversation. So there's a lot more I could say, and I could ramble on quite a while, but I've tried to be silent and, hear a lot more context of people's background, and even understanding why do Trump supporters come from the context they come from. A lot of it's because of they don't understand their own context. They don't understand American context, American history. And, when you're born into a vacuum, so to speak, and you don't know the history and don't know the context, it's easy to view things wrong. So there's nuance and context to everything. I don't think that everything in American history can be explained by critical race theory. I don't think everything today can be explained by critical race theory. Ultimately, I think, the sin problem, and the solution is not critical race theory. It's one of the manifestations of it, but ultimately it's sin and Jesus Christ being the Savior. But that doesn't negate me from doing the work that I need to do to build bridges with my Black brothers and sisters and be a voice for them as a believer and follower of Jesus Christ. So that's what I got to say. Thanks, Mark.
Man, I think Grant needs to be a moderator next time instead of us. You know what I'm saying?
No way, that's you, Mark.
Yo, man, thank you, man. You said everything you said was on point. We definitely need you in the next one. We're gonna keep you in the loop. Conversation rules the nation. Everything that everyone said was on point. Phil, I see you said your phone, your thing's gonna die. You mentioned something though, Phil. You said something about like white evangelicals kind of thing. And I just learned about that. I didn't know what that was before like 2-3 weeks ago. I still don't. So that's like for the next call. We gonna
cool.
dive into that and start figuring that out.
Perfect.
Yeah, let's talk about that next time because I still
Good
don't know. So this is pretty much a learning thing. Grant, thank you so much for sharing. But you know, like you said, the silence part. But if you don't speak, we don't hear you. Like everything you said, you know, added so much value to the conversation. And if you didn't speak, that wouldn't be there. And every single individual that spoke on this call, we appreciate you. We appreciate Christina King, Mama K, Dr. Jackson, Luke Moon, Robert Nicholson. We appreciate everyone, the Philos Project, and now we're building the Shiloh. So stay tuned. We're gonna be having more of this. And this is great. Like this was better than the last one. So this tells me that we're moving in the right direction. So I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I know I'm hungry, so I know y'all are. So
Hey, thanks for hosting, Mark.
You said what?
I said thanks for hosting, Mark.
Yeah, yo, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. It wouldn't be what it is without you all. So we're gonna let y'all go. Like I said, definitely appreciate y'all for coming. And stay tuned. If you can, shoot one of us an email, whether it's me or David Bannister. Grant, I already got your information. Phil, Rachel, I don't have yours. Let's get like a contact list somehow between me and David Bannister, and so we can keep you guys in the loop. Sam, we need you. We definitely need you on the next one. Lindsay, Vanessa, everyone here needs to be on the next one. So.
Also, you can send your information to Chloe Wilson. Thank you for her.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Chloe's right there. I'm bugging. Can you share these events on PLN? Use that demographic. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So everybody have a good night. You know what I'm saying? It's like pre-Friday, so you know what I'm saying. Turn up as you will. All right. Peace out, y'all.
Thanks for coming.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yo, peace in the Middle East.
Peace in the Middle East. How do you leave?